everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. This is Bo Oliver, joined here today by Aaron, the Nerd Soup Monkey, and we are coming live from Toronto at TIFF 2021. A little weird recording setup we have here on opposite ends of the room, and we're hopefully it works out. Doing some test runs, and I think we got it going good.
Too far from me. I need you to be up in my business when we record.
Yeah, it makes it more personal that way.
Intimate, sexual almost.
This feels like unnatural. Like it shouldn't be done. Podcasts shouldn't be recorded this way.
Sometimes you got to bend the rules, and we're working with what we got. So, and by the way, before we start, Toronto, I love this city. It's clean. It's nice. There's so many different things to do. Everyone's just beautiful, men and women. It's just a bunch of good-looking people. Makes me self-conscious, just strutting around all day. But
well, we should have realized that Drake, Justin Bieber, Ryan Reynolds,
right?
Doe, handsome for a politician.
He's politician hot.
Yeah, he's politician hot. I'll give him that.
But yeah, just a beautiful city. And I wish we could spend more time, but we're here for business.
Here for business, which is also a pleasure because we were treated to 3 movies on day 1 of TIFF. The first movie we saw was Drive My Car by Ryusuke Hamaguchi. We also saw Dear Evan Hansen, which was directed by Steven Chbosky. And Petite Maman, directed by the French director who most recently directed Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which many people considered a masterpiece. But I would say it was a good day 1. Started the day with a 3-hour dramatic epic.
Yes.
A heavy movie. Definitely a movie that it took an emotional toll on me. I don't know about you. Coming out of it, I kind of just wanted to marinate for the rest of the day. And then I realized, oh man, I got 2 more movies to watch.
Yeah, I was watching Dear Evan Hansen and thinking about this movie.
Yeah, throughout Dear Evan Hansen, I was trying to piece together some of the themes and pieces of dialogue, trying to remember stuff.
It's like if you're having sex with someone and you're thinking about somebody else. That's what it felt like.
We were calling out Drive My Car's name while having sex with Dear Evan Hansen.
But
yeah, you just want to get into general thoughts on the first one, Drive My Car?
First movie, first festival ever, and it's at the top right now. I think it was the best movie of the day, and it's going to be hard to beat for best film of the whole festival. It was just, like you said, a very deep, layered, so many layers to this movie where I'm still thinking about all the different connections and the narrative structure, and everything I think was so carefully crafted, and it won Best Screenplay at Cannes, so that makes sense. And I mean, 3 hours, like you definitely feel the length at times, but I think at certain moments they're just through dialogue, they're able to create such a atmosphere and tension or just intrigue that keeps you going throughout the film. And at its core, it's really just about 2 people trying to or refusing to confront their past or move on, and kind of how they deal with that or how they don't deal with that. And I think you dive into a lot of things that can resonate with a lot of people there. And it was just, I don't know. It has this not overlong, but this super long prologue that was just so gripping. And yeah, I just thought it was just a magnificent movie technically, and just well acted as well on every level, really.
Yeah, the prologue was great because you're so invested in these 2 characters in the beginning, and then they kind of throw you for a loop there. And when the credits start rolling, when the movie really starts to get going, you realize that it's not going to become something totally different, but that there are some surprises in store. It was definitely a movie that I'm glad I knew nothing about it going in. And my initial thought coming out of it was no premise or description would do it justice. Just reading the description on Letterboxd, there's so much more to it than that. There's so many layers to the movie. I think there's also something so special about when life bleeds into art. And obviously, this is all fiction. But it really does tell the story on 2 stages, the reality of the characters and the fictional reality that they're trying to create with play. And so many of the lines of dialogue, they felt very confessional, like they could be seen as monologues for each of the characters in their own way. And the way that they just brought together all these individuals who are dealing with the same thing in different ways was very beautiful and cathartic at times. And like I said, the emotional toll it took on me, I think I cried 3 separate scenes. And it wasn't only the writing, but how well performed the movie was. They were nailing every line of the dialogue. And that's something that the main character emphasized in the movie. telling his performers to find the rhythm of his words, and they certainly found it in
Right.
this version.
No, yeah, even that like just adds another layer just through obviously no spoilers because this movie hasn't premiered yet, but the basis is he's like a play director, playwright, play actor. He's in plays. He dabbles in plays.
Right.
And just the stories of the plays mixing with the stories of his writing and the story you're seeing on screen, it's all very intertwined and it's very fun, or very, I don't know how fun it is, but for me it is like just an active viewing experience. And even after trying to like thread all those different storylines together and trying to pick pieces and connect them. And um, it's, it's probably not a movie for everybody as far as just length, and if you're not a fan of foreign films in general because of the reading, then it might not work for you. But I think it really hit on so many levels. And like I said, it's going to be hard. And that's like, we still haven't seen Power of the Dog and Dune. And I think it's going to be hard for that to be top. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this may be my favorite movie of the year so far. And it's interesting because you mentioned sometimes people are a bit apprehensive when it comes to foreign films because of the subtitles. Go watch Bong Joon-ho's Oscar speech. But this movie makes the effort to tell its story in multiple languages, and I thought that was sort of
that was a very, very interesting. I don't think I've seen it before when, like, I think it was Roma, right, where they had different like italizations for different languages, but
right.
This was very like unique in the sense of how it was portrayed. And yeah, I don't know what the release is going to be like for this, but if it comes out over here or streaming or however so, like, you should definitely check it out.
Yeah, definitely. I hope it is. I hope it does make its mark at the Oscars or throughout award season. I mean, obviously, that's the thing. Watching this type of movie, it makes me think that awards are just so meaningless.
Yeah.
Because everybody in this cast was so phenomenal. They all deserve fucking Oscars. And there are always movies like that where it's, how can you differentiate between performances or say one is better than the other? But
Right.
I hope a lot of people in the States get around to this movie and just everywhere, really. So
There's going to be a problem with this next movie, though.
I cannot wait to see how the world reacts to this next movie, because in the middle of watching this, I got so excited at that prospect of all the debates, of all the discourse that is going to be surrounding this movie. And the thing is, it is a play, so it's been around for some time. But I saw a review of on Twitter that somebody wrote, all the people who have memorized the songs of this play without knowing the story are surely going to be in for a surprise. I mean, the premise, is that a spoiler?
No, they talk about it in the trailer.
Okay. So obviously he's writing these notes to himself, the main character, Evan Hansen. It's a task given to him by his therapist, and they mistake that note as a suicide note for another classmate of his.
Yes, and
he just kind of goes with it. He kind of goes with the flow. He's a socially awkward loser, and he realizes that being the friend to this individual who killed himself makes him more interesting to the people around him.
Dude, like, this movie is going to be, you already see it now just from the TIFF reactions. People either really like it or people think it's like garbage and everyone should be in jail. I think it's a very mixed bag for me, because there are times where it resonates a lot with, like, just me personally in general, because I do dive into lots of different issues with anxiety, depression, and like, I think a lot of it hits home and holds true, and it is very sincere, and it elicited a sincere emotional response from me at times. But at other times, it's just not that. So at other times, they downplay it, they don't dive too deep, and it's like, it almost feels like they were a little tentative, or they didn't treat it with enough respect, where at sometimes they try to maybe pass it off as jokes. And if that wasn't the intention, then that's just poor filmmaking. And if it was, then I felt like it was like not in good taste. But with the times it does hit emotionally, I'm like, okay, this is actually, I like what they're doing here. And I just think when that's inconsistent, though, like your main focus and such an important issue, and you're kind of sloppy in the way you convey it to your audience, then that's a pretty big problem. I think the performances are all great. Ben Platt looks like he's 50, but he really is convincing in that role, and he played it in the play, so it makes sense that he would just fit naturally into this role as that socially awkward outcast. And I think all the performances top and down are just really, really good. And The songs were good. Only one I really was like, this is a banger. The others I was like, I could take
It
or
was
leave.
probably the most problematic song of all of them. Looking back,
Right.
that's when they're really getting into him giving into this idea that he was his kid's friend. And it's a song about the emails that they would write back and forth,
Yeah.
these fake emails, because that's how kids communicate these days, right? Their email. And
Right.
they're just singing and dancing and having a great time thinking of all these imaginary scenarios. I felt guilty for bopping in my seat.
It was a bop
But
though.
there were times where the musical aspect, I think this is subject matter that needs to be tackled with more sympathy from directors and writers, because I think a lot of people dismiss mental health issues in high schoolers as they're lazy or they're being teenagers when kids can really deal with these issues. This just wasn't the best outlet for that. And like you said, at times some of the humor, it comes off as unironic,
Yeah.
where it wasn't supposed to be humorous at all.
I wish we could go into spoilers because like there's certain things I just want to pick apart right now and talk about that just
This
like
needs a spoiler review. This
I-
needs
we'll
Gods
talk-
of Egypt type of
yeah. But
ripping it.
there are things I liked, and that's why I kind of gave it like a pretty decent score. Like,
Yeah, on my Letterboxd review, I said it wasn't a solid effort, but it was an effort. It wasn't like they were phoning in the performances. They were all acting their asses off. Like Amy Adams was
I can
great.
see why like this was like a good play and entertaining, and maybe like it's better that way. I think. I mean, I definitely like teared up a few times. Good thing we had to wear masks because it's just soaked up my tears. Because a lot of it did ring like, you know, was relatable in a lot of ways, and like you felt it, and it felt sincere, but it's just too inconsistent on that front, and you really got to nail that to kind of. And it almost seems like they were hesitant to until like later in the film.
Yeah.
And it's like it definitely had I think a PG-13 or R, right? Like you can get into that. I don't know like what tonally the play is. I'm sure it's very similar, but maybe just like that Broadway type musical atmosphere lends better to portraying these issues in this way. Because through film, it just, I don't know, maybe not the best medium.
Yeah, they're not shying away from the issues, but it's like they're not acknowledging how fucked up some of the aspects of this story are. And you're seeing that a lot these days, where characters make decisions, moral decisions that maybe certain people wouldn't make, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad people. There's a focus on that, the gray in characters and in everyday life, more and more movies. This movie was just too surface level. They didn't get into the gray enough.
When it was at the surface level, that's when I feel like it was not done well. When they did dig deeper, I felt like that's when it actually hit, and just too few and far in between.
Alan Dever was probably the best out of all of them.
I think Ben Platt might have been, but she was fantastic too.
Yeah,
She was
Ben
really good.
Platt is definitely a good performer.
The way he was singing and like and that awkwardness too, but like you can like it wasn't like he recorded just him regularly singing and they put it in. Like he put a lot of the characters' little ticks and kind of quirks in there, and the way it was like a socially awkward outcast singing at times, or an emotionally distraught person singing at times. So there were breaks. There were little like I like that aspect of it.
Some of the musical parts were very awkward because when you're watching a musical on stage and they're singing and dancing and it's important to the actual story and narrative, you don't need them to acknowledge that people are singing and dancing. But there were scenes in this movie where crucial elements of the story would happen through song, and then they would not let us know if the characters knew they were singing. It's like the characters weren't aware that they were in a musical.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna start doing.
Just randomly singing.
Like, yeah, I'm super depressed and like miserable. Sometimes.
Well, the reaction
Still.
shots are going to be legendary once this movie hits the general public, because it looks like they feel like it's an awkward situation because he is singing, even though what he's singing about is just awkward, you know? But they're giving him these looks like, why are you randomly singing at the dinner table or in the hallways at school? That's what a musical is. But the best musicals find a way to integrate that seamlessly. For this movie, a lot of the cues were so abrupt and so jarring at times that it kept taking me out of it. At first, I knew it was a musical, but like the second song threw me off. Like, oh yeah, it's a musical. Oh fuck, I already forgot about
You
that.
could open it with a musical number.
Yeah, right. The first number, I'm like, okay, this is a musical. Terrible opening number. A lot of them are just characters walking around and the camera following them as they sing. That's my whole thing with musicals. If you're going to make a musical, it needs to be flamboyant. It needs to be off the walls. And this wasn't that.
I think it bordered on like suspension of disbelief, where I feel like it has to be like fully suspension, like, you know, it's like you need that like
Yes,
almost
no, that's a good
fantastical
point.
element. Like you can't be half and half.
Right. They were half-assing it. You
Not
need
half-assing it, just yeah, maybe, but
you need to full-ass it.
yeah,
Um,
I full ass everything in my life.
that's good to know.
What?
But yeah, it's definitely a movie I'm excited to see how people react to
That's
it.
gonna be
I
fun.
can't wait to just see the war of words.
Just the spoiler takes and just like tweets and stuff. I think
Yeah.
it's pretty great.
But I imagine a lot of people will end up enjoying it. I think it might be. I don't think it will get the same awards love as a Green Book, but I think it will be similar discourse where people are like,
it's the Green Book of depression movies.
yeah, musicals, the Green Book of Depression musicals.
Yes.
Because that was a movie that I think on film Twitter most people didn't like Green Book, but there were vocal supporters of that movie, and I think you'll see that as well with Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah, definitely.
And the third film that we watched on day one, Petite Maman, like we said in the beginning, directed by Celine Sciamma. You liked Portrait of a Lady on Fire, right?
Yes, I did a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was a great movie.
No,
And-
that's like one of the things that like stood out to me for this film, especially looking through the massive list to choose from. It's like you just go by, oh, I know this director. She did Portrait of a Lady on Fire. That movie's fantastic. I'll add this to the list. I'm glad we did.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, when I go through these names, when I go through the movies, I don't recognize some of the names, but then I see movies that I've watched by them and I go, oh, okay, that's who that is.
Yeah.
This was definitely one of them. And, you know, similar, obviously, same filmmaker, so the style was similar. It's always impressive how much she can do with characters just saying nothing, just using the camera, focusing on them. You get so much emotion, so much visceral emotion out of characters who are sitting in silence, not sitting, acting in silence. And that's what's always so impressive about her as a director.
Right. I noticed this from A Portrait of a Lady on Fire as well. And I haven't seen any of her other films, but the lack of any type of score is, I don't know, it really just lets the atmosphere take over. And I think both of those films are very atmospheric and like, I think it fit perfectly, and then you save it for certain moments, and it really pops and it really stands out. And by, like you said, focusing on the characters, focusing on the words, focusing on the atmosphere, the setting, I think it really brings the setting alive here. And I mean, at its core, it's just a delightful movie. And there's like a kind of like a couple twists and turns in there, but I think at its core, it's something just about like just family and just trying to connect and, you know, maybe you're not always the best, but you try your best and kind of just enjoying the little moments or enjoying like what you have when you can. It really was, especially after the first two films we talked about, this was a very delightful cap to day one. I think what stood out too is the performances by, there's two children actors, sisters, I believe, twins. And I think one of like maybe the drawbacks when we talk about like child dialogue being too adult-like, I think it was very much so in this one, but the performances by the children were just so great. It felt very genuine when they were just being kids, building forts or trying to cook and things like that. It just felt very, it just brought a smile to your face, made you laugh. It was very sincere, and I think that I tell you what, it's a hell of a follow-up to Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Two very different films, but also kind of similar in some ways.
Oh yeah, very similar.
Connecting to somebody and enjoying your time, the time you have, you know? So it's...
Right, there's this idea in both films that just because something ends doesn't mean that it wasn't special.
Right.
It's still with you. The age-old question, is it better to have loved and lost or never loved at all? Sometimes I think of a movie like Petite Maman, not everyone gets the opportunity to love someone else like they did, because there are some interesting twists and turns in this movie when it deals with some of the themes of friendship and family and motherhood. So a lot of people will watch this and probably think to themselves, I could have used a day like this.
Yeah.
Not because of, obviously it was cathartic for the characters, but also it's just getting some insight that's not always available to mothers, to children, to fathers, to siblings. So that's the magic of movies. You can open up this window that you would never be able to in reality. It's not as simple as that. If there was a portal where you could just walk into a movie like this, that would be awesome, but you can't. But yeah, overall, like you said, it was a good cap to that first day. 71 minutes. It goes by. It's a breeze.
Yes.
And it feels like a nice, cool breeze. It's a very delightful film to just sit back and get lost in for a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I really like this one. It's not Drive My Car was still the standout from day one, followed by, but this was right behind it. Dear Evan Hansen, a little far back.
Yeah, no, I mean that's good about these festivals, is that you're going to get a lot of good movies, and it's going to be hard to rank them.
Right.
But for that day one, those were, I mean, we only saw two, so 1 and 2. Congratulations, guys. We'll see how everything rounds out. I guess on our last video, we'll talk about how we'll rank the films that we watched. But started out strong, man. I imagine that both of these will be near the top of my list. Drive My Car, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to beat. I think the only one that can maybe scratch the surface would be Dune, or...
I hope that Big Daddy is good.
If Dune beats Drive My Car, you'll know it's ready to go. You'll know it's something special.
All right, that is day one recap for TIFF. We've got some exciting films coming up. We're going to see Power of the Dog. Well, actually, we've already seen it, but we're just going to record that video. Titane, Violet, and Last Night in Soho, Edgar Wright's highly anticipated film. So can't wait for that. Even though you guys will be watching this all after the fact. It's kind of interesting, Little time travel mechanisms going on here. All right, see you next video. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. I am Bo Oliver, joined here again with Aaron, the Nerd Soup Monkey, and we are back to recap TIFF 2021 Day 2. We managed to see 4 films today, so it was a packed schedule, a bit more packed than yesterday, but started the day off with The Power of the Dog, and this is a movie that has been talked about for a couple of months now. The production has kind of become legendary because of all the pushbacks and the delays. Not the pushbacks, but just the delays in production. Benedict Cumberbatch spending months in Montana learning to be a rancher, going completely method for the entire shoot, and Jane Campion allowing him to do that. She was the one who embraced this idea. She introduced him on the set as Phil. But what did you think about this, Aaron? The Power of the Dog. It looks like it's going to be a major player during award season. Yeah,
and that was the buzz going in, and I was expecting to be blown away, and I just wasn't. I think that the biggest thing for me is during the first couple acts, they try to build this tension. And it's very, very apparent they're trying to do so. And I think if that works for you and you are able to invest and they're able to kind of suck you in, then yeah, I can see how this movie works. But for me, I just had a hard time feeling that tension. And it wasn't until the third act that the movie really saved itself for me personally, where I did end up having a pretty favorable review of it, or view of it. But I think for it to be, for me personally, like in that Best Picture category or even a favorite, I think it had to have been stronger. And I just couldn't get into it for those first 2 acts. It seemed very, very forced at times, and it just didn't feel like it makes sense. And I think Benedict Cumberbatch is great, and he just didn't fully work for me in this one. He had a great performance, but I think a more commanding presence, or I said to you, like a Daniel Plainview type presence in There Will Be Blood, how he naturally, the voice, so his actions and his movements and his stature and screen presence, that creates tension all on its own. And that just didn't work for me with Benedict in this role. But great performances throughout. Even if that didn't necessarily work for me, he was still great in this role. It looked beautiful, fantastic score. And the third act really, I was really into, and I think it ended very strongly. And I think that's kind of the saving grace for this film for me. I still would have thought it was decent, but it went from decent to like, okay, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this wasn't my favorite movie of all time, but awards contender, definitely. I think that the performances, you may see a couple of nominations. Benedict Cumberbatch as the lead. He definitely worked more for me than he did for you. I think that the character, charismatic rancher, very irritable man, a lot of sharp edges, not a lot of soft. The whole movie, the main theme is one of the main themes is hyper masculinity. And I think what the movie does well is that it presents itself as something, and then it kind of reveals that it's something else.
I like that. That was my favorite. Like, I wonder if that reveal, like maybe if I sit on it and think about the first two acts in retrospect, or even see it again upon knowing what I know, would make it like would boost it for me. So I think it might. And I said that I would definitely want to see it again.
Yeah, it's not to get too heavy into the plot, but it's a movie about broken characters,
right?
And you start to realize that as the story plays out, the way that they interact with each other, that a lot of the pitfalls from their relationships are things that were already there. A lot of the tension for me did work.
I never found it like him to be nothing more than just like, yeah, he's a huge dick, and he's like not like a great person, and that's conveyed in the trailer that he's kind of terrorizing these people, or he's definitely being an antagonist of sorts. But they rely on that a lot to develop that tension between him and the rest of the characters, and I never felt like anything that was happening warranted any type of response that I was worried as an audience member. I wasn't really like worried for any of the other characters.
No, I wasn't worried for them, but I did pity them. I definitely pitied all of them.
I mean, it's a shitty situation and all, but like, I don't think it was like, it's just
right. I don't think the point was that these characters are in danger because of Phil's presence. I think it was more that they're just uncomfortable because of his presence,
right?
And that there are,
I get that, but
millions of Phils out there.
Yes,
and even when Kirsten Dunst has that conversation with her son, not to be afraid of him. He's just a man. He's just another man. That the movie does a good job of humanizing this villainous character to the point where, obviously, I don't want to get into much plot detail, but selling it, I wonder if maybe they shouldn't have sold it that way, because he doesn't. Like, of course, he is a dick at times, but he's not the biggest dick in cinema history.
No.
We've seen worse characters receive redemption. We've seen worse characters than Phil Burbank receive redemption. I think that there was a humanist aspect to the movie that I really appreciated. That it wasn't so much black and white, that there was a lot of a gray area where all these emotions were coming out in all these different ways.
Yeah, and I get that. I think the point of what Phil is trying to portray here, like, I get that, but like, I think there's a way to, I don't know. I just don't think the way it all worked out in the film itself necessarily gave me any sort of like, I don't think I reacted to it the way many people have, or kind of was like lost in this uneasiness.
Yeah, I can't say I was lost in the uneasiness either. I think I was just more interested in.
I think that's what what a lot of people were praising, and I can see if it does. Like I said, if it does latch you in, I can definitely see where that would work for a lot of people. I just, for me, I didn't fully latch on, and really until the end, where I was super interested. And yeah, I think the third act was very clever and ended like, I loved the ending. So it's kind of hard to like not say it's like a good movie, or probably I could probably see why if it does get nominated or is the front runner. I can get it, but for me, it just wasn't fully there.
That's fair.
Kirsten Dunst's fantastic. Jesse Plemons, I feel like he's playing the same role. I love him dearly, and I hope he's listening. He hasn't been really able to spread his wings in this one.
I do think he's a lot of people have been unfairly comparing him to Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think they're different actors with different skills. I think Jesse Plemons' best skill is that he can play the good guy or he can play the bad guy
Or just
to great
the
effect.
like
Well, I think with what they were going for with his character, that was another thing that was very impressive about the movie is the time that they spend focusing on each character and how similar they are, but they're expressing it in different ways and they're coping with it in different ways. And some characters end up not necessarily fixing their problems, but they remedy them, and others don't. I won't spoil who or what. But he was the straight man here. He was supposed to be, he's the complete opposite of Phil. And what was interesting was in the beginning, this isn't necessarily a spoiler, Phil is really making the effort to have a sort of kinship with him. But Jesse Plemons' character doesn't want any of that because there's obviously a really messy history between them of growing up and learning how to ranch and operating this business together. You could just tell that they're never on the same page. And he's trying to pull that relationship out of him and he's resisting. Maybe in the future he'll get a role that will allow him to spread his wings. That's why I was so impressed with Cumberbatch in this, because he's an incredible actor, but every time I watch him, I'm watching Benedict Cumberbatch. For me, I was watching Phil in Power of the Dog. I got lost in the performance. I thought he was lost in the performance as well. Listen, method acting is controversial, but sometimes it can work, right? I guess if you're not sending dead rats to your co-stars, it's all gravy.
Right, and I don't think Phil Burbank is any joker.
No.
Yeah.
A lot of the talk was that he was going to be like the Joker.
I'm going to become the Joker.
I'm going to become Dr. Joker. It was cool to see Thomasin McKenzie in there as well as Cody Smith-McPhee, an actor that I really only know him from the X-Men movies.
Yes.
So I'm always happy for these young actors when they get the chance to act, to really act, instead of being in a shit dumpster fire movie. And the next movie we watched digitally, the cool thing about TIFF is some of their movies have been put up digitally on their website and others haven't. So they've been kind of messing that up. But for the ones that are on there, one of them being Violent, we got to enjoy it. This was a movie that surprised me because I never knew if Olivia Munn was a talented actress. I always thought that she was likable because you see her so often on the internet. She's a presence on social media. But here she proved that she can elevate a script that isn't great, but through her performance, she made me actually enjoy this movie. And I think if it was a lesser actor, a different actor, maybe I wouldn't have. And normally I don't like movies that lay themselves bare in front of the audience. I don't want to say the movie was talking down to me, but I could have done
subtle.
without. It wasn't subtle at all. And listen, it's also very relatable. I think a lot of people will watch this movie and find parts of it relatable. I think that's what the director was going for. But there were certain stylistic choices that I think if you take them away and keep the same movie, it's better.
Yes, I think because she, like you said, she's so good in this role that you can convey a lot of her inner monologue or inner demons like through emotion and just through her actions. But I think
which they did. That was the strange part is she was doing such a great job of giving all of that through her performance without the text.
It was super stylized in your face for a topic that, like you said, like that voice in your head that we have, or people, well, a lot of people have, that always contradicts you or tells you something that may not even be true about yourself and how you view a situation. And like, it's a very real thing, a very serious thing. And I get like her, and I respect her saying, fuck subtlety. You know, this is something that a lot of people go through. Put it more in your face.
Right.
But also, I feel like
this would have been revolutionary if she was the first person to do it.
Right. And it was like almost so unsubtle that it was distracting.
Right.
Where it's like, I can relate to this character and the way she feels a lot. But like the way you portray it is not like, it's like, okay, I get it. It's like, I know this. Like, this is something I don't need to. Maybe it's more for people who don't but she said that she made it for people like who have the same feelings. And I feel like that's something that you don't really have to shove down your throat because it's like, yeah, we get it because I know what you're talking about here. Like, show me a story that make the story play out the same exact way without all this aggressive pushes towards like, hey, look, the voice is back, or the text her inner monologue's up again. Like, she's always doing this. It's like, okay, enough. I know what we're tackling here. Let's maybe focus on that rather than the interruptions.
What's promising is that this is Justine Bateman's first movie, and I think it's a good first effort.
It's good. It's good.
It's definitely a good ground floor to build upon this and tackle similar themes in subsequent movies and films. But I think maybe, I think a lot of people will look at this and say, I didn't need some of the stylistic choices for the points to get across to me. And she makes sure that those points get across. I always love this Hollywood setting. I'm just an absolute sucker for it. The agents, the executives.
That was a nice wrinkle.
Yeah.
But I can see some people watching it and being like,
oh, you're a Hollywood agent or you're a Hollywood exec. Shut up.
Executive, like a beautiful woman, like.
Yeah.
But I guess could be intentional too. It's like people, and I think Dear Evan Hansen touched this as well. No matter what your view on the outside is or what your life may be or perceived as, a lot of people from all different backgrounds, different jobs, income, like go through some of the same stuff. So I don't really mind that as much.
Yeah, a lot of people made those criticisms about La La Land. It's two struggling artists living in LA and they just can't make it. And they complain that it's a movie made from privilege by people of privilege. But listen, dude, not every movie is going to be about rags to riches. Not everybody is like, yes, pretty people can suffer from mental illness. Pretty people can suffer from anxiety and depression. Yeah, exactly. Look, prime example. I don't know if you're Olivia Munn.
No. I'm not. The voice in my head just said, "Shut up, you fucking ugly bitch."
The setting, you could have replaced the setting and still had the same movie. She could have been in many different jobs or positions.
But I did like the wrinkle, especially here at TIFF when they're talking about festivals and how like movies getting made and everything goes.
That's how she got accepted. That's how she got the movie accepted.
Right. They name dropped TIFF.
I wonder if the other festivals that they name drop denied them. It's like Venice, Telluride, any takers here? Yeah, but I was surprised by Olivia Munn because, what I've seen her in, it's not that I didn't think she was a good talent, but she never really stood out. And maybe it's because she never really had the opportunity to stand out. And here, leading this film, she did a great job. And like I said, Justine Bateman, a solid first effort for a directorial debut. An overall good film.
Yeah.
Good. The next movie on our list...
Ooh, Titanic.
Yeah, it was a bit better than good. Also, a lot weirder. This is a movie where all the stylistic choices basically worked perfectly for me.
There was one choice. I don't know if it's a spoiler. It probably is.
Everything about this.
You can't. This is gonna be hard to talk about.
It's gonna be nearly impossible to talk about. Word of advice is just don't read anything about it. Don't watch a trailer. Just go in completely clean slate.
It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just a pretty insane, in your face type of movie that it's weird. It's out there. It is unapologetic in terms of like what it's trying to portray or its themes, and it really is just a high octane, not a mindfuck in the way of like Twin Peaks: The Return or something like that, but like more of just why.
Well, I think what
is like it makes sense, I guess, within the film, but like when you're like watching it, you're like, this is fucking absurd. It's an absurd movie.
It's certainly an absurd movie. People have described her as a provocateur, something that she denies. She doesn't like that label. But when you watch a movie like Raw,
she's provoking me.
No, she certainly is provoking. Yeah, if movies could have a stench, she would make sure that they would stank. Because she's just attacking every fucking sense, trying to make me puke in the middle of a theater. But if you're going to be a provocateur, you have to be good. And she is definitely a good filmmaker. She has perspective. She has a vision that she's trying to get across. She's not provoking just for the hell of it, because it's every aspect of the movie.
It's such
It's so visceral. Even when
Yes.
people are just sitting down and eating, you hear the slurps and the
Yeah.
chews.
That was
And
the most disgusting part of the movie for me.
yeah,
With the
yeah.
spaghetti
The
slurping.
sound editing was pretty impressive. Of all the fucking scenes, the spaghetti slurping is the most disgusting.
I mean, the main character is like a terrible person, objectively. But like, there's a certain sincereness to her in certain parts, and it's like, oh no, I'm not rooting for her. No, I'm not.
Yeah, it was it's kind of a, I don't know if I want to call it an examination of gender roles, but I think that there was hints at that. Not hints, obviously. I can't even say hints. But that the way that yeah, right,
Flip.
the way characters were acting.
From the beginning of the film, like within the movie itself, not even a flip in a traditional sense. Within the film itself, from the beginning to end, when you see how where she is in the beginning and how she's portrayed and how others view her towards the end, where it's you kind of do see that flip. And yeah, it's
There's another character that appears in the movie who had a very interesting role, and I thought it was the actor who portrayed that character did a great job. But their relationship in particular was one that it's going to have people talking for months and months. It's definitely a movie that warrants 2, 3, 4 rewatches. And like you said, it's hard to talk about this movie without getting into some of the spoilers, because it's similar to Drive My Car, where description is never going to do it justice.
No, I think the synopsis you read to me was doesn't make sense.
No, it's like True.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
True, kinda. It's like that Twitter account, True, I guess.
It's like Titanic, like people going on a boat.
Yes, yeah. People have troubles on a boat.
But
I think it worked for the most part. I can see why so many people. I can see why it won the major awards at Cannes. Why so many people are really enjoying it and loving it, calling it a masterpiece.
I wouldn't go that far. I think it was definitely entertaining. I definitely hit every emotion at certain points, but I don't think I was really blown away by anything. And I feel like I don't want to say it relied on the kind of absurdity, but if that's the type of film you're making and you rely on it, like that shouldn't be a negative, right? Because that's what you're going for.
I actually think the absurdity there was
one thing that was even more absurd than the rest of everything. That I think if they lightened that a little bit and it was just more normal, I think it might have. I don't know if it would have been much better for me, but like, 'cause I already do love it, but like, I think I might have preferred that. Just me personally. Because that was just super out there.
Right. I can't wait for this movie to come out where we can talk about what you're referencing. It was super far out there.
Because there is a way to do that normal.
Yeah, but I don't think, obviously it is all intentional. I don't think the director herself would make a movie that didn't have that aspect.
I mean, it isn't meaning to it, and we can go, maybe not get into it. There's like, I get that, and like it's another layer to the story, but I think definitely created some of the more gruesome parts.
Yeah, disgusting, absolutely disgusting movie at times. And if anybody has seen her previous movie Raw, you would expect that. I wonder if this is just going to be something she does throughout her career, time and time again. She takes a new topic and just fucking blows the lids off of everybody that's watching it. The lead actress, Agatha Roussel, was incredible. I wonder how much awards love this movie is going to get when the Oscars come around. It seems like this year there may be more of an emphasis. There may be more of an emphasis on international films because we've had such a weird release schedule. And you wonder, not coming off of Parasite, obviously, but if Parasite will open some of the floodgates here,
Especially, like, I don't want to say more, like, probably more in the mainstream that, like, foreign films have been more accessible to the general audience. What?
I wish I could just take my graduating class from high school to see this movie.
They definitely have become more accessible, I think, with all the different streaming services. And obviously with maybe Parasite, but films like Roma, like winning major awards, I think that like there's a growing positivity towards international films, where I feel like in the past no one would even know how to find them, or if they wouldn't really seek them out.
Right. Right. Do you think that this is a movie that's just too weird for the Oscars?
Yes.
Any awards you think that it could sneak into? Best director, maybe?
No.
Best international film will definitely be nominated for.
Yeah, like best director, I'm sure they'll save those for Jane Campion, maybe like an Adam McKay, names that aren't expected. Who knows? I
hope it gets love.
It's just not an Oscar film for me.
Yeah. In the Bo Oliver Oscars, it would definitely be nominated. I think it's I put it at number 2 on my list. I think I enjoyed Drive My Car a little bit more, but this would be number 2 for me.
I think
2 at TIFF and 2 on the year.
I think it's 3 for me. I think I have Petite Maman before it.
That's fair.
I'm just a sucker for some wholesome content.
2 completely different types of movies from 2 French directors.
Yeah.
It's opposite ends of the spectrum, but still very much French.
Yes.
Those French are very identifiable.
Like the definition of pornography, they say.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't describe a French movie, but I know one when I see one.
Yes, yeah.
And not only because they're speaking French.
That is also a good point, right? Yeah, I think this movie may be a French film.
What, by the language? No. Everyone's naked and smoking cigarettes.
Everyone's depressed and talking about Nietzsche. And on the final day of day 2, we retreated to Last Night in Soho, directed by Edgar Wright. This is highly anticipated. Edgar Wright is one of Film Twitter's favorite directors. Interesting fact is Tarantino actually helped him name this movie. So, cool to know that all our favorite directors are friends. But this was a movie that... Yeah, I wrote on Letterboxd that it was a tale of 2 movies because I thought the first half had a lot of the familiar elements that we've gotten to know with Edgar Wright movies: kinetic energy, charm, obviously heavily stylized. And this was actually shot by Chung Hoon Chun, who is a frequent collaborator of Park Chan-wook, who's, seasoned cinematographer. So getting that collab there, and you really saw it. Like I said, the first half, the performances in the first half of the movie were great. The dream sequences featuring Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy, who's become one of the biggest stars, young stars working today. All of that was great, but then the second half gets bogged down into not familiar Edgar Wright tropes, but kind of familiar tropes of the horror genre. I know he marketed this movie, and it's being marketed as a psychological thriller, but it wasn't that psychological for me. It was actually more predictable. So those elements didn't really have my brain in a frenzy. They just had my brain, anticipating what was going to come next because I was getting tired of what I was watching. So like I said, it was very split down the middle for me. Tale of 2 movies, like I said, tale of 2 halves.
Yeah, I get that. And I think I like this movie a little bit more than you did. And I do understand where you're coming from with that third act. It kind of strayed away from the psychological aspect of trying to deal with this new environment for the Thomasin McKenzie character and kind of divulge into your classic kind of ghost story. But it didn't take that much away from the film as a whole for me. I just thought this was, first of all, it's aesthetically, it's just beautiful. And I think those aspects, when you change from the modern world to the 1960s, I think that's all very well done. And it drew me in right away. And just seeing all those events unfold. And like you said, Anya Taylor-Joy, not only is she like just a rising star, I think she solidified herself as just a star over these past few years. And Thomasin McKenzie as well, like, talk about up and comers. I wish she was a little bit more in The Power of Dog, but only being in that type of Oscar potential movie is going to like help her career. But she stands out in this, and she also did in Jojo Rabbit. So I think, and Matt Smith is just probably the most like charismatic guy. And
oh yeah,
he's just so goddamn charismatic. So like those, and I almost forgot Diana Rigg. If this is her last performance that like she shot and is shown, and she went out with a bang, because I think the cast really stood out for me in this as well. But I just think this movie was just, there's these scenes like when she's in an apartment with these lights coming in, it's just so vibrant and jumps off the screen at times. And just the look and feel and vibe of this film I really resonated with. And yeah, you're right. In the third act, it does kind of it does dip a bit in quality, but as an overall, I mean, I really enjoyed this one. It's one I'm looking forward to watching again when it comes out in theaters. For the rest of you casuals, no, it's kind of
When the movie began and it said for Diana, I knew who he was dedicating it for, Diana Rigg, because he had just tweeted
yeah,
about her, but I didn't put it together that she was actually in the movie. So it was a pleasant surprise. She's become such a legend because of Game of Thrones. That's part of the magic of Game of Thrones. It made so many icons out of these actors and characters. But her film credits, she hasn't been in many films throughout her long career. So for her to be in an Edgar Wright movie, to have the role that she did as a caretaker, but for me, I wanted the movie to continue down its trippy road of the first half.
right.
And I know a lot of he talked about the movies that he was influenced by, and I think he just kind of lost those influences in jump scares and characters in a frenzy, the crazy woman that no one believes, instead of continuing down the road he was going.
Right, but I really did love that initial setup of like,
Oh, the setup is great.
Mackenzie's character in a new place, trying to find herself, but getting lost into somebody else's life and making that in her mind like the picture perfect life, or what she strives to be, where she tries to emulate the Sandy character, and just kind of those illusions of what she thinks like life is, or what she strives to be, getting all taken away. I think that's like where I think a lot of the psychological elements come into play. And yeah, like we discussed, it kind of devolves into just a typical kind of either whodunit or classic horror.
Yeah, more of a thriller.
But I still I think those. I was very intrigued in those moments as well. It didn't just completely take it away from me. So, yeah, I think I saw on Twitter someone said that like we need to start talking about Edgar Wright having third act problems.
Oh yeah, very similar to Baby Driver for me, where the setup was so different and unique, and then it just very familiar in the end.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we talk about with like the Marvel tropes, like even in something as unique as Shang-Chi, at the end of the day in the third act, it comes back to something pretty familiar. But hey, that's a hard thing to do, is to wrap up a good premise. And I don't think it was a poor attempt. I think it was just a attempt that wasn't as good as the first two acts. And yeah, I still found the ending to be satisfying. And going back to Diana Rigg, yeah, that is funny how so many people like Game of Thrones was her introduction to this cat. Like it might like Max von Sydow, like someone else who's just a staple of like cinema, and just like, oh, who's this guy? And who's this three-eyed raven in Game of Thrones? He seems pretty good. Where's he been for the past 50 years, or where's she been for the past 50 years? But yeah, with the Diana Rigg character, mostly Miss Collins, like I feel like that's where we got most of what we're used to with Edgar Wright, with this quick wit. And
yes, I thought for a lot of the time it was scaled back. That this was Edgar Wright going in a new direction. Obviously his charm and his wit was still there, but it seemed like more focused on, I guess, the bigger picture here, the themes that he wanted to tackle. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a bit different from his previous efforts, because they're all very cheeky, they're all very fun, and obviously he's making movies for adults, but they're lighthearted. This one I thought it was going to be a bit more heavy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those, like, he reallocated his kind of high octane style into different ways, though. It's not that
he channeled that energy in a different way.
Yes. And I think when that hits, it really is like a film where you kind of can get lost in, like the main character getting lost into this other world, or in the past. But
yeah, I like the direction he's headed, though. I want more movies where he's getting out of his comfort zone a bit, but still keeping those sensibilities that he's mastered. Yeah.
So, I mean, the third act maybe takes keeps it from being like maybe a potential top 10 for me for this year, but I still think that
definitely for me too. When it first started, I was like, okay, we're on board for something incredible here.
Yeah, but I think it'll still be pretty high up on my list for 2021. It's pretty high up on my list for TIFF much higher than yours. I think it's like, yeah, I have it like number 7. So I really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people
Yeah, I don't know
will
where
too.
it's
And
on my TIFF list.
I think a lot of people have a lot of the same criticisms you have. To what
Yeah, and I think
effect?
a lot of people are going to also really like it, you know,
Mhm.
especially Edgar
I
Wright
mean,
fans. It's
I
not
hope
bad
Thomasin
by
Mc-
any stretch of the imagination.
no, I hope Thomasin McKenzie takes off though. She
I
is
think she
really
will.
good.
She's a very, very talented young actress, man. Her English accent was pretty good in this.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And Anya Taylor-Joy just continues to run through Hollywood.
Yeah. Hopefully she doesn't stop either. Just keep
No,
going. Build all
she's
this
just
fucking
full throttle,
momentum.
dude. All right, well, that is TIFF Day 2 and Day 1 recaps. This will be the end of our first video recapping TIFF 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys like and share and subscribe and do all that stuff, of course, because this is YouTube. And stick around for our part 2 video that may be dropping in the next couple of days. Maybe it drops tomorrow. Who knows? But that's going to be featuring us talking about most anticipated movie of the year, Bergman Island. And we'll be talking about Dune, so that should be cool. And some other movies, right? We saw a lot of good movies at TIFF, so I'm excited for that part too. Aaron, you excited?
Damn, we were making some good points in that video. Hey guys, Aaron the Nerd Suit Monkey here. Before we end this video, I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. What can I say about you guys that I haven't already said about myself? You are the most important part of the channel and the main reason we keep going strong. Like Bo says, you keep the lights on in the fridge so the fridge is full. Or something like that. So, from everyone here at Nerd Soup, I'd like to thank you guys for your continued support. If you're interested in joining the ranks of our patron supporters, head over to patreon.com/nerdsoup and check out the rewards we offer to our patrons. We recently dropped some new stickers for you guys to check out, or you could choose a tier that will allow you to select a movie, show, or video game for us to review. We've got a full slate of fan-suggested reviews coming your way, and we're really excited about the chance to review some of those movies and shows. We've also got t-shirts, mugs, behind-the-scenes videos showing how we bring our videos to life. And once again, thank you to all our Patreon pledgers who have been supporting us throughout the years. Without you, we wouldn't be able to convert all your pledges into cryptocurrency, so thank you from my future self for making us rich.